Hello, thank you for joining us. My name is Ben Miller, and I will be giving you this webinar on managing recipes and ingredients in Genesis. This is meant to be an overview of just managing and organizing your recipes and ingredients. We do offer advanced training options on our website, esha.com. Our agenda today, this will be about a 30-minute webinar, give or take. We'll look at organizing recipes by suppliers, characteristics, and groups. We'll take a look at using search filters. We'll look at exporting using filters. We may or may not get to using filters for ESHA security. I'll at least hit on a little bit. I may open up ESHA security and take a look at it. And we'll do a little bit of Q&A. We do have a few upcoming webinars. On April 12th, we'll have an overview of the ESHA port workflow utility. On May 24th, we will have a webinar for preparing for a FDA nutrition label audit. And then on June 14th, we will have a webinar for restaurant menu labeling using the Genesis Food Menu Report. We also have a few trainings coming up pretty soon here. We have an advanced Genesis workshop May 12th and 13th in Chicago. That's going to be an advanced training going over due diligence and documentation, ingredient and recipe management, advanced label topics, allergens, and a lot more. We also have a professional training or kind of standard training July 14th and 15th in Chicago. Going over creating ingredients and recipes, exporting reports, best practices, that kind of stuff. If you'd like to register for either of these, you can contact Carla Hadsel on the phone number on the screen or by emailing training@esha.com. A little bit about Genesis. Genesis was released in 1991 for recipe formulation, product development, menu analysis, nutrient analysis and searching, reports, and audit trails. It's also built for building compliant labels, allergens, ingredients, and nutrient content claims. With the Genesis application, we do have our ESHA database that has about 60,000 items. Actually, I believe it's over 70,000 items now. Sourced from more than 1,800 reputable sources, including the USDA, a lot of manufacturers and restaurants, Health Canada. We have a UK database as well. We track over 163 nutritional components, including MyPlate, diabetic exchanges, and we're continually updating the database for accuracy. And let me switch over to Genesis now. Don't want to go into any questions yet. All right, so we'll take a look to start with creating products and suppliers. All ESHA ingredients that come in the database have a supplier assigned to them, which is ESHA's primary source of the data. A lot of ingredients are going to have a product too, or are often known as a brand. As a result, there is a large list of both already in the database. We'll take a look if we go to our database tab in the application and go to modify. We can take a look at the pre-built list of products and suppliers. As I mentioned, suppliers is going to be your kind of main source here. So yeah, A&W, if it wants to scroll for me here. A large list of items here. You can also create new suppliers just by going to new and typing in whatever you'd like for your supplier. So test. Hit OK. Now if we go ahead and scroll down into the T's, you'll notice that the one that I just created, the test webinar supplier, does show up in a different color. All of the ones in black lettering are going to be suppliers and products that are built into the database by ESHA. And the ones written in blue here are going to be user-created items. As you see, if you try to remove these items, it's grayed out. You're not allowed to remove the suppliers and products that ESHA puts in. But you can remove or edit the user-created items. There's also a second way to create suppliers and products. Go ahead and go to create, just open up a existing recipe here. Look at one of our pre-built recipes from one of our common databases available on our website. If you go to edit recipe, we see product and supplier here. From here we can either select the supplier or product. Just hit OK, and I'll apply it to that recipe. Same with ingredients. Also hit select and type new, and now we can do a new supplier. And hit OK. And it'll create that in our list of suppliers. We hit OK and apply that to that recipe. Another way to organize items, go ahead and close this recipe here. If we go back into our database and modify window here, another way to organize items is by database groups. These are going to be logical ways to separate items within the database. You can apply ingredients or recipes to multiple groups if you want. So you can give it a characteristic and a different item as well. There are generally 3 different types of groups within the software. We see the ones down here that are not in a folder like characteristics and databases are. These are the general groups, generally for different types of foods, such as breakfast foods, candy, beverages, that kind of thing. We also have a folder right here for databases. That would be the different databases that we offer within the Genesis database. So the USDA database, the UK database, the Canadian nutrient file. You can also create new databases in here as well. I'll just go over that in just a second. And then we also have characteristic groups. Dairy-free, gluten-free, kosher, organic, vegan, and vegetarian are the built-in characteristics in the Genesis database. These are different than allergens within the database. So it may say gluten-free. That does not necessarily mean that the item is marked as the wheat allergen if it's not in the group. There's no correlation between the characteristics groups and allergens. Similar to creating products and suppliers, we just go ahead and go to, say, the databases folder here and hit new. For creating user groups, we do suggest that you create them either in the databases folder here or the characteristics folder. If you go up to the actual base groups folder, notice this is grayed out. You're not allowed to create a new group within the base. You do have to do it within either databases or within characteristics. Go ahead and just create a new user created group. Actually, I'll make that a folder. There are 2 different types of items within the Groups tab. There are either groups and folders. A folder is going to be a collection of groups. If you're okay with that, it'll create what looks like a folder inside of the databases folder. You cannot add ingredients or recipes into a folder. It can only contain different groups. If we now go ahead and click on that user created folder, I hit new and say user created group and select the group type, we now see the icon that signifies that it is a group that's now created under that folder. So you can create a hierarchy of your different groups. You can remove those if you'd like, or you can edit them to change the name. And again, as we mentioned in the suppliers and products area, the color difference here is going to be the difference between the black are ESHA created groups, which cannot be removed or edited, and the blue are the user created items that can be removed or edited. You may notice the publish button over here. That is for the Genesis API only. It doesn't hurt anything if you publish a group. It adds it to another folder called published groups, but it doesn't change anything unless you own the Genesis API, in which it will push that information to the Genesis API. All right, and with groups, you can also set default groups for your preferences. So we'll go ahead and close this guy out here. We go to Home and Preferences, and we have 4 preferences at the bottom here. We have new ingredient groups, new recipe groups, new advanced label groups, and new food menu groups. What this is going to do is, if you take a look over here, any group that's checked off in this area, let's say we do common. If we check off our group here, any brand new ingredient that I create for this specific user will automatically be added into that group. This is a user-specific preference, and so if you have 4 different users of Genesis, each user would have to set up their own set of default groups for each individual item type. This does not also tie in with the ESHA security workflow utility. The default settings within ESHA security are set up specifically for ESHA security and do not overwrite the changes added here. All right, I'll go ahead and OK that. And we'll go ahead and just open up a recipe here. I'm going to open up just the sample recipe that we have in the database. Open up our sample fruit salad. When searching for items to add into the database, the search will search by, of course, item name, but it will also search by supplier and product as well. So we'll do a little bit of testing out to see what results we get back from our searches here. Look for table salt. We'll find 33 items that all have the words table and salt in the either item name, product, or supplier. I'm assuming all of these are probably in the item name. We can include a supplier if we'd like. Let's say we're looking for USDA items only. We'll now find just the product of USDA or supplier of USDA that includes the words table and salt. So it has to include table, salt, and USDA in either the item name, product, or supplier. And if we want to change that to say a more specific, maybe like Morton, we can search and we'll find just a couple of items from the Morton brand when they create their salt. Remember that this does include all of the fields. It's not that you're selecting to search within product or supplier or item name. Your search is going to include all of these areas. This won't include groups though. If you'd like to search for items within a specific group, let's just do table salt again. If we click the More button, the search for will automatically be added right into our search. You can search by either name, government code, ESHA code, or user code, but you can also select by groups at the bottom here. So if we select just from the Canadian nutrient file that we want to search for and hit search, we're just finding items from that specific group in the database when we search for table salt. All right, we'll go back over to our preferences for just a moment. With groups, we can also exclude those groups from any searches by going to Preferences and then Groups to Exclude. If we look into this area here, by default, generally, the Canadian nutrient file and the UK foods are both going to be checked off like so. That means that if you ever search for any items within your database and you are looking for Canadian nutrient file specifically or the UK database, you won't find any results unless you go into your preferences, groups to exclude, and then uncheck those boxes. This is a great way if you want to create a user-specific group, and we'll go ahead and create one now, just kind of take a look at how it would work. If you wanted to separate your database for retired items and currently in production items, we go retired. We can create a new group for in production. So you can separate items based on if you're done using that item, if it's a retired item that the company doesn't sell anymore, if it's currently in development or in production but not ready to be sold yet, or currently in use or being sold. So you can create different database groups based on where it is in your production. And then if we go back into preferences and groups to exclude, most of the time, if an item has been retired and you don't want to use it anymore and you're not selling it anymore, you just want to check that off, and then anytime you ever search for an item, it will be excluded from any of the searches, so you'll never see it in any of the searches to be able to use it anymore. Now, if you did want to see one of those items for any reason, you can simply go back into preferences, uncheck that temporarily, and then search for the item, find it, edit it, and then exclude that group once again. We can show a quick example of that actually visually. So we'll open up our sample fruit salad here. If we go to edit recipe and groups, we'll go ahead and add it to that retired group here. So now our sample fruit salad is in that group. If we then go to open recipe and type sample again and search, we'll only see our peas now, we won't see our fruit salad. So it's been excluded from our group. That will work for if you're adding items to your recipe as well as any search. There's one other thing we can do with searching here. Let's go ahead and open up a recipe. If you'd like to search for a specific ingredient that is part of a recipe or part of a number of recipes, let's open up one of our ingredients or one of our recipes just so we can find a specific ingredient. All right, so we have our mayonnaise, soybean. Let's look for that item. So let's push this one off to the side here. We'll open a recipe. If we do a more search again, pulling up more searching options, let's clear our group selected. We can search within items for matches. So if we then type in mayonnaise, soybean, we can then search, and it should bring up any recipe that specific ingredient is a part of. So all of these recipes here, if we open up one of these, that mayonnaise, soybean, and safflower will be part of it. So it's a good way to get kind of a report of exactly where your individual ingredients might be used, or if you wanted to find where all of your ingredients are used, if you were swapping out one ingredient for another ingredient, you can then find out where all those are and swap them out. There is also an option, if you go back to our database, instead of having to manually replace each of those individually, there is a search and replace feature within Genesis. And with this option, if we search for our mayonnaise item, soybean and safflower, and select it. If we wanted to replace all the occurrences of this specific ingredient with something else, let's say we want to find a different mayonnaise here. I completely spelled that wrong. We can do partial searches as well. So we want to replace it with just a simple mayonnaise instead. You can take this item, which is your existing item, and replace it with just another item. We hit OK. This is a permanent change. There's not going to be a way to change this, so I'm not going to hit yes. But if you were to hit yes, it will replace that individual item with all occurrences with another item. All right, let's take a quick look at ESHA security. I think we got a little bit of time here. With ESHA security, it is built to be able to separate items and give specific permissions of items for different users. So if you have a couple of different users, you only want one user to be able to have read-only access to all of your items in your database, or have no access to specific items in it. The way all of that is separated is by database groups. So you give that specific user either no access or read-only access to database groups, and then any item assigned to that database group is going to be restricted access. Won't go too deep into ESHA security. If you have any additional questions about that, you can contact our support staff. You can go to help.esha.com, get into live chat with them, or give them a call. All right, looks like we might have just a couple of questions here. Question number 1, can I organize my recipes by date of entry? Yes, you can. Let's pull back open Genesis. If we go and take a look at open recipe, you'll see a list of all of your recipes. I have about 105, and the user code, the ESHA code, the government code, product, and supplier are the default fields that you will see when you're searching. If you right-click within the search, you can add in, there's a couple of additional fields you can add in as well, modify date and creation date. And if we just click on the header of either of these, we can sort those. Click it once, it'll sort it from newest to oldest. So the newest item I've got is my sandwich ham on rye, which was created about 13 years ago. Modified about 13 years ago. Oh, I apologize. It was the oldest first. Now we have a couple of items that have been modified recently. Or creation date as well, we can sort by. So we can sort by either the last time it was modified or when the item was actually initially created. And you can do the same thing when adding items as well. So if I open up a recipe, if I search for salt, oh, we don't have that on there. I apologize, I am incorrect. Next question, can I search recipes and ingredients for specific items? Yeah, we mentioned that a little bit. I'll go over it one more time. So if you're looking for where an ingredient or where a recipe is used in other recipes, you can just go to Open Recipe, More, make sure the checkbox for search within items for matches to the above criteria is checked, and search for, say, bread, rye, because it's in use right over here. And we can search and we'll find the couple of items, the couple of recipes that I've got that rye bread in use for. All right, third question, can a recipe be saved in both characteristics and databases? Yes, you can save items to as many database groups as you would like. If we stay on our recipe that we've got right now, go to Edit Recipe and then Groups. And we can check off, say, Common and My Recipes. We also go up to Characteristics and say that it's dairy-free, gluten-free, and kosher. So you can add a a recipe or an ingredient to as many different database groups as you would like. There's no limitation to the number of groups, and there's no limitation to it has to be part of one group or more. It can be part of no groups if you would like. All right, number 4, can you run a report to find all recipes that are gluten-free or really part of any group at that point? Yes, what we can do is, I'll close this recipe now. We go to Open Recipe. We'll again go to our More search here. We'll uncheck our search within items. We don't want to search within, we want to search for what's part of a specific group. If we then search by groups, hit Select, and then check off, say, gluten-free here. We're now going to be searching for any item that is part of that gluten-free database group. We do have a include all and include any different options for how you're searching. Includes all groups is going to be if you select multiple groups, say gluten-free and dairy-free. The item would have to be part of both groups, so it would have to have gluten-free and dairy-free both checked off. Include any group would be if it's part of gluten-free or dairy-free. So if you check off 4 different groups, if that item is part of any of those groups, it will be found in your search. Another question, when ESHA updates the database, do I have to replace the ingredients in my recipes or are they updated automatically? All ESHA items will be updated automatically. So if the USDA database is updated from SR 26 to 27, or actually it should be going to 28 this year, any items that were existing, phone call, any items that are existing in the database, if say the calories go from 28 calories to 29 calories, those recipes will be updated automatically with the new information automatically. If an item is removed from the USDA database, if it's not in use by any of your recipes, it'll just be completely removed from the database. If it is in use by any of your recipes, it will be added to, and I may have it in my database here. We'll take a quick look here. Go database modify groups. And there should be a ESHA retired, and I do not have that group in my database. Oh, there we go. Retired ESHA codes. So if an item is removed from the ESHA database, the item will be moved to the retired ESHA codes group, but remain in the database because you have it in use. We don't want to just remove an item and leave you hanging. So that item remains in your database, but is removed from the overall Genesis database that we send out to customers. It's looked at more as a user item at that point than a ESHA mandated item. All right, another question, what is the use of publishing folders or publishing groups? Publishing is just for the Genesis API. If a group is published, then it would be broadcast to the Genesis API. If you don't know what the API is, or if you don't own the API, clicking this publish button does absolutely nothing positive or negative for you. It's not going to cause the group to act any differently within the application. It's just going to add it to this little folder down here that says published groups. If you own the API, you'll have to publish that group before you can get information on any ingredients or recipes within the Genesis database. But again, if you don't own the Genesis API, it means absolutely nothing to you. I think that's all the questions we have time for today. Thank you for listening in. If you have any additional questions, you can direct them to support@esha.com via email or give us a call. Let me pull back up my contact information here. Thank you and have a great day.